Hi, I'm very often down on Adobe products because of various reasons. One of the main reasons is the expense of it. I think a lot of students and non-professionals just can't afford the price of the subscription. So I often recommend other software. But if you do have access to the software, there are features in the software that I think shouldn't be missed and are super useful. And one of those is the digital art brush collection that they have. And they're called Kyle brushes and named after Kyle Webster. At least they used to be called Kyle brushes. And I'm looking here, and these are special brushes that are for Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Fresco subscribers. And they used to have this branding here, and it says, "A brush with greatness, meet Kyle." International award-winning illustrator, designer Kyle T. Webster has drawn for the New Yorker, Time, the New York Times, Nike, IDEO, and many other notable companies. Since he founded Kyle Brushes in 2014, his customized Photoshop brushes have become industry standard tools used by artists at Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, Weta Digital, HBO, and Cartoon Network. Kyle lives in North Carolina and teaches life drawing, portraiture, and digital painting at the UNC School of the Arts. Now, so this is what it used to look like. And since Kyle has left the building, so to speak, it seems like a lot of the branding about him has been removed. So you see, here's the link, Photoshop Brushes by Kyle T. Webster. But when I click on the page, I don't see any mention. I may be wrong, but I don't see any mention of him anymore. So maybe that's why the brushes disappeared and they came back with the page redesigned. And those Kyle brushes are a set of digital art brushes that I believe are now approaching like 2,000. And they're just included in the software. He left Adobe in June of 2024. Now, a bit of backstory is Kyle is an illustrator. The story that I heard was while he was doing his illustrations, he would create these different brushes for his own personal use. And then he started showing them to his friends who were also illustrators, and they wanted them. So he began to share them. And then the idea was sparked that he could sell them. So he began selling them on the internet. And at a certain point in his career, he realized that he was making more money selling these brushes than he was as an illustrator. So, of course, he began devoting more time to developing the brushes. And in a 2022 interview, he said that he had over 500,000 customers before he joined Adobe. And he was selling these brush packets at $5 each. So, and he also said that he had multiple, some customers bought multiple packs. So, you do the math. He mentioned that it took about a year of focused effort before he got noticed by Adobe, which eventually led to a job and selling his brushes. A key part of the deal and something that mattered to him was retaining his own branding, something he made sure to include in the agreement. If you'd purchased them previously, you could keep them and continue to use them. But if you didn't, you had no more access to them unless you jumped into the Adobe ecosystem. So here I go again ragging on Adobe. But it did upset me because the idea that these things were out there and Adobe acquired them in order to force you into their ecosystem. But that's beside the point because I'm here to talk about how amazing these brushes are. So he joined Adobe and he became a spokesperson for them. And he began doing these wonderful live streams and video tutorials. And you should go out and look for them if you haven't seen any of them, if you are interested in that sort of thing. But at the time, I was also really happy for Kyle Webster because I thought this was an amazingly successful move that he made. So initially, the Kyle brushes on Adobe started with a collection of about 1,000 brushes. And seasonally, more brushes would be added. So about a month ago, I was talking with a student and I was trying to show him these brushes when I was kind of left a little flabbergasted when I went to the Adobe website and I opened the page and I found that most of the brushes were gone. They were back to that original set and all the seasonal brushes had just disappeared. So I was a bit heartbroken, to be honest. So I began doing a little research and trying to find out what happened to the brushes. And I had already known that Webster had left about a year ago. This was also about the same time that the Federal Trade Commission was suing Adobe over allegedly deceptive subscription practices. So now Webster is at Procreate. And from what I gather, the reason he left Adobe was because of the direction that Adobe was taking with AI. Ultimately, burnout played a role in his decision to leave Adobe, but more significantly, he voiced concerns about the company's approach to AI. He was uncomfortable with Adobe training AI using artists' work without their consent or compensation. It also troubled him that the AI tools being integrated into the Adobe products were actively costing creative professionals their jobs. He didn't want to be a part of something contributing to that. He felt that Adobe was moving in a direction that no longer aligned with his values, and his goal was to make a graceful exit. While he didn't confirm that Procreate explicitly promised not to use the AI, he'd said they didn't seem to be heading down that path, and that was part of what attracted him to them. In the end, Adobe was no longer a good fit for him. I cannot find out why the brushes were taken down. Perhaps they were negotiations, but they are back now, and these are some amazing tools. So Kyle Webster is now at Procreate. And Procreate is an amazing software. It is also an industry standard for drawing. And this software is only $12.99. It is a one-time fee. The only drawback is it's only good for an iPad. So you need an iPad and most likely an Apple Pencil. So there is a big barrier to entry, but the software itself is only about $13. And it's, again, a one-time price. And the software is used by professional artists for like character design and storyboarding and things like that. And it is a wonderful tool. So enough about all that. These are the brushes, and if you have an Adobe subscription, I suggest diving in and exploring them. But if you're interested on how to download them and organize them, I'm sure you can find some information on the internet. But if you want me to do it, just leave a message, and I'll try to get something out there. But anyway, no artist needs this many brushes. What I do is go through and experiment, and I save the ones that I like. And they are just fun to play with, and they spark a lot of creativity. Well, I'm going to sign off here. And if you don't have an Adobe subscription or plan on getting one, and you have an iPad, I suggest getting yourself the deal of the century and start making art with Procreate and start experimenting with those brand new Kyle Webster brushes.